Welcome to the 100th Monkey Radio with Tom and, believe it or not, Ramon. And we've got, he's now a special guest on the show. We've got Ramon with us tonight, and really glad to have you on the show, bud. How you doing, man?
Pretty good. I'm excited. Let's see, I put out a new book this week on Thursday. So, like I was saying before, I was trying to match it up with my life numbers and stuff like that and put it on a 9-day. So, it came out Thursday, which would be the 27th. So, if you guys go over to Amazon and just put in my name, Ramon Manuel Almonte, and you can find it. Or you can, there should be a link somewhere there.
Yeah, we'll have a link. We have a link on the main page on the website, and I will make sure it is accurate and updated when we get done here tonight. So,
cool.
Well, I'm glad to have you back, Ramon. And
we also have Jake and Greg. Don't forget about them.
Oh yeah, we got they're the Monkey Crew. I covered the Monkey Crew. We got Jake, Greg, and or LFE. Excuse me.
LFE, yes. Sorry.
It's hard to do this. And we've got Stephanie here too, Jake's wife. Greg's wife. Oh. Jake's wife, yeah. Greg's wife.
Not that I know of.
We pass her around.
Oh, yeah.
That's bad.
That was in bad taste.
Yeah.
So, anyways, guys, I want to welcome everybody to the show tonight. We've got a great show lined up for you, and we are recording this on August 28th of 2015. And as all of our regular listeners know, we were absent for a couple of weeks there. I went through quite a bit of an ordeal, let alone with my pet situation, which one of these other shows, maybe we'll cover that in the next Monkey Crew review. But I managed to snag on to some walking pneumonia, and wow, what a trip! What a trip it's been from getting back from the depths of misery. And I want to send out my deepest heartfelt thanks and gratitude to everybody out there and all the well wishes and energy. Oh my God, the energy people sent was fantastic and palatable. So, gracias, thank you. However you want to say it, my gratitude is just overflowing for all of you guys out there. Yes, I was so humbled by the response I got. Oh my God, I was sitting here, I was running a pretty good temperature and just miserable as all hell, and I was like, oh my God, I got to do something. I got on Facebook out of everything. The last thing I wanted to do was touch my computer. I got on Facebook and just kind of screamed help. Oh my God, I'm sick. And I was just so humbled by the response. It was immediate. Before I had a chance to turn the computer off and walk away. Yeah. I started getting responses. And
I saw when you put it up right away, and I was like, oh my, he must be really miserable.
Yeah. So things like that happen. When things like that happen, and you reach out to the community, you really get a good idea of the love that's really out there. The true caring for our brothers and sisters that is really out there. And, that sort of thing really helps to reinvigorate my own personal path as far as, reaching out and doing the show and bringing these guests on here to talk about things that really matter and just helping that stuff grow. Good stuff.
Yeah, you know what's funny about that, Tom, is that both I wanted to kind of cut my Facebook all completely because I had like 1,000 friends and it was just a lot of crap on there. And I was like, I need to get rid of this, and then I get rid of everything and just keep the author's page. And then it's kind of like anything I posted on the author's page, nobody saw it except Jake, who would PFL, who would check my page every once in a while. But other than that, I end up getting it back. So, it goes to show you that Facebook is very, very useful. At times it can be like a leaky blood vessel.
It's a double-edged sword, It's definitely got its pros and its cons, and you just need to. It's that discernment factor.
Yeah, it's how you want to use it. You know, I mean, I noticed the same thing for the 100th Monkey Facebook page. Is that it's hard to get people to actually see it, but if I use my personal page and advertise for the 100th Monkey on my personal page, then I'm almost guaranteed that 5 times as many people are going to actually see it and be able to read it. So, it's just about how you want to use it, and like, I've basically, anybody who's posting stuff that's just completely negative constantly, like, I just don't even look at it anymore. I mean, now I'm at the point where most of the people that are on there are just talking about, real things, and not focusing on, negative news and, being a bunch of negative Nancy's out there. It's actually, people who are trying to uplift everybody around them and uplift everybody's situation.
Yeah.
So, like attract like.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. If you guys don't mind, I wanted to talk about 2 different things, and I'll start off with, speaking of negative news, and I think with our guests, we can probably talk about that a little bit, but the whole thing happening with, oh my God, his name blanked out. Trump. With Donald Trump. The whole thing about, with what he said about the Mexican illegals, and he's talking about he wants to get rid of 11 million illegals, and there's a very famous journalist from the Latin channels, Jorge Ramos, who's been kind of really combating him on that, and saying you can't get rid of 11 million people and take away kids' citizenships who are born to illegals. So what it feels like to me, it feels like a whole ruse to, number one, whether he wins or lose this presidential race, his shows would do so much better. Like people are watching him because of the drama that he's causing. Number two, now that he's causing so much drama, people are starting to look at the other candidates as like they're a much better choice. They're not, but they do look, much better. Like that whole drama Hillary Clinton was having.
Hegelian dialectic, right?
Yeah. So, it feels like a whole ruse that they're using. He's not going to become president. Like, I can feel that he's not going to become president. If he did, it will be very scary.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a distraction, I mean, look over here while, something else is going on, put your focus into something that, it doesn't even, I mean, what does it really matter? Yeah, he's saying these things. Yeah, they're controversial. Yeah, they're not, they're not all that great. I mean, they're not good. They're not good at all, but it still just seems like, what are they trying to distract us from?
That's something that, as a society, controversy sells, conflict sells.
Yeah.
I mean, people are fascinated by, the one show on TV that used to just, I don't watch TV anymore, but that used to just annoy the crap out of me. Because it was a show that primarily focused on pain, but told people to laugh about it, was America's Funniest Home Videos. almost every single video that they show on that thing has something to do with somebody hurting themselves. And it just drew tremendous laughter out of the people. And you know, that's disturbing. I mean, that's just flat out disturbing.
Yeah.
That says something about the way conflict sells. You know, controversy. It sells. I don't know.
Yeah. Let me get into another one. This one is it's a story. It's not really a news. It's like someone put a picture of dolphins and then wrote on the bottom. I don't know how true this is. I've been trying to look for the story. I hope it's true, but it sounds like something. Even if this particular story is not true, I know that they do things like this. This just goes to show the care and intelligence of you know, our brothers and sisters in the sea, the dolphins. And let me read it. Lifeguard Rob Howes had gone swimming with his kids in New Zealand when a group of dolphins appeared. The dolphins started to herd the humans. That just sounds hilarious. Howes tries to drift away from the group, but two of the bigger dolphins herd him back, just as he spotted a 10-foot great white shark heading towards him. I just recoiled, he said. It was only about 2 meters away from me. They had corralled us up to protect us. The dolphins kept us up for 40 minutes until the shark lost interest. Now tell me if that's a real story. That's just
amazing.
It goes beyond showing their intelligence. Like, how much more proof do you need?
Yeah, it would not surprise me in the least that is an absolutely true story.
Mm-hmm. They're very smart.
I've heard of other very similar stories of dolphins and saving people from all sorts
drownings.
of
Drownings and stuff like that. I've heard that too.
Yeah.
Does anybody remember the TV show? What was it called, about the dolphin and
Flipper?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm from that school, so.
Yeah, there was an episode in Flipper where they started to attack some sharks that were trying to attack the humans.
Yeah, I know I saw it.
Anyway,
was
we
like,
have
God, I can't remember, like 3:30 every afternoon after school or something like that.
Was it? Because for me that was like early 80s.
Yeah.
But anyway,
we ought to get our guest on here before he falls asleep and decides to do something else. So, we have got Perry Mills back with us, and I'm not going to do much of a bio on him, guys. It's on the website, and we just did a show with him last month that, if you want the deep and detailed bio, I urge you to pop over to the website, and you're welcome to read it there or listen to the first half of the first show like we did last month, and we go into Perry's background quite well. And welcome back to the 100th Monkey Radio, Perry.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
By the way, the bumper music you guys heard before the show started was Perry Mills, Man on a Mission. That album, Perry, I just love it. I absolutely love it. I have it on my iPod and I listen to it all the time.
Oh, thank you so much. That's very flattering.
It's good stuff. I mean, it's uplifting. And there's, it's just like a lot of those proverbs and stories that are out there that have so many different layers of meaning within them, you know. I think every time I listen to the album, from all the way through, I pick up another layer of something, another deeper meaning within one of the songs that I say, hey, wow, this actually goes a little deeper than I thought.
Yes. Well, cool. That whole album, was written when I was living alone in a studio building in the woods, off-grid. It's a big old artist studio, and I had a whole winter where I just was all by myself by the wood stove and some of my favorite little imbibements, and I wrote that whole album in one winter. but it was a very private winter for me. And, sometimes to do something, as expansive as something like that, because, the lyrical things, if you do listen a little bit, you start to see some of the existential, realities of a man on a mission, like you were just saying.
Yeah.
And we live in such fast lives, that sometimes it takes these lulls in the action where we drop in deep enough to be creative and get deep. Like, to write a book, for instance, you really have to take some time to do these things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or do anything well. I mean, we have to extricate ourselves from our busy and harried lives.
Right. Before we get into the meat and potatoes, you mentioning that, how Tom says that it has different layers. When you write things, whether it's the book or music, do you feel like sometimes you write, like you say, okay, I'm going to write about this or talk about this, and it ends up being something completely different that you have no idea where the hell you put it from, and it has different layers that you didn't even notice yourself at first?
Well, the songs are funny, and people approach them from different directions, and sometimes all directions. For me, because I'm primarily a songwriter and primarily a guitar player, I would usually start with a vibe, musical ditty or some kind of a vampy rhythmic guitar idea. And by the time I would play and add to those parts musically, I would get kind of an emotional texture and terrain that I started to tap into. I usually would put my lyrics on after the music was already pretty well established. And so a lot of people will start with just a great poem and set it to music. It has always been my experience to start with a vibe that comes off of the music, because I'm so emotionally triggered by certain sounds. And it's almost like you get these keys that unlock certain emotions, and music does that for all of us. Other things can do it as well. So I would always use music as my own kind of way to process out my own emotions. And then I would add the words that would describe that emotion.
Yeah, I've heard that it's actually quite difficult to write a song for a poem. To put write a good the good music for a poem is quite difficult to do.
Well, it would be for me. I know that, because music is all about rhythm, and sometimes a poem doesn't match and meet into a rhythmic context. So a poem can have its own rhythm without a doubt, but it's not always the same rhythm you choose on a song. I always start out with the music, and then I tailor the words for the music.
Right.
Yeah, I DJ and I mix, I mix music together, and I also write poems, and I have a few poems that I've put out there, and I don't have a beat in my mind for what I want to make it out of, and I've tried to make beats for them, and I've tried to use other people's beats to put my poems over, and I mean, nothing works that way. I can't figure out anything to go over it, so it just sticks to being a poem.
And just to contradict myself, Tom, I just realized that the first song on that album that you were playing so graciously on this show a lot of times, actually that started out as a notepad with just a bunch of like sonnet lines. I just wrote like 3 pages of stuff, and that was probably the only thing that came first, where the lyrics came first. And I just realized that now as we were talking about this, that I actually started with words on that particular song. So I guess there's no rules.
Oh, no rules. No rules. I guess it's in your blood.
Yeah.
Yeah. With creativity, it seems that that's as soon as you start putting rules onto creativity, you just choke the crap out of it.
So true.
Yeah.
Fact,
go ahead.
I was just going to describe that, I just was in the studio last night, and I wrote this song that was helping me to process through some of the recent happenings in my emotional life. And this particular song was a good one for me to kind of feel those things. Cause, when you're going through hard times, and we all certainly go through them, we all need a way to kind of ground our emotions or download them or, feel them out, express them some way, because otherwise they roll around inside of us and make us ill. So I was using this song. I decided, okay, I'm going to go in the studio, and this song I felt was really an important song, and it was definitely helping to help me. So I go in the studio, And I'm just like bleeding heart in this song because it's feeling so good to feel as sad as I was feeling. And it's just, it ends up being some kind of a sacred ceremony when you build a song that's built out of something that you're really feeling deeply. And I can easily see that in a poem or anything. A person's writing a journal. Any way that they can do that, it's really a piece of magic in its own self.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Well, let's shift on off into spherical reality and the awakening magical self. Now, this is at least the initial title for the book that you're working on, and I mean, in a nutshell, this is all basically you're trying to put together a pretty concise and from what I've seen and you know what I've gleaned out of it so far in the discussions that we've had, a pretty rounded expression of the experience here on planet Earth. So for listeners out there and those who may not have listened to that first show, can we start with spherical reality? I have your book outline here in front of me, and I think you did an excellent job laying this out as far as how to present this to people.
Thank you.
And I like the beginning spot where spherical versus linear, because I mean, when we're talking about reality, everything that we experience here in the third dimensional, the appearance of it and what we perceive from the third dimensional perspective is very linear. I mean, one moment follows another, follows another, follows another. Then, the next day, the day's the 28th. Tomorrow will be the 29th. This is 2015. Next year will be 2016. It's all running in a direct linear progression here. And, so that versus what you're proposing and putting out there as a spherical reality, there's a definite shift that to be able to really perceive what you're trying to get out there and to relay to everybody, there has to be a definite shift in the way we're perceiving our own personal realities, correct?
Oh, most definitely. I would say it's an 180-degree shift, really, but it's also always both. So, okay, we got spherical. I'm asking the question, well, what is the difference between spherical and linear? Because, the first thing that people are going to think of is that they are an incarnated soul of one kind or another, or they're even, if they're not particularly spiritually oriented, they might think of themselves as just a body, a biological entity that, was sired through their parents, and the whole scientific route. The evolutionary model, of course, is a linear model. It all suggests that you start somewhere, just like the Big Bang Theory. You start somewhere and you end somewhere. And the thing is that when you when you're looking at life in linear terms, you're really measuring your life in temporal terms. So you're looking at yourself, okay, I'm born at such and such a time. I've read and heard from my parent generation that there was such and such a history. I'm headed down the road toward a future that is yet to be determined, but is pretty much hemmed in pretty well by the belief systems and what everyone says in cultures around the world, what everyone says is possible, whether it be science or whether it be religion. And all of that, that formatting of seeing the self as a linear progression of evolution from small to large, from young to old, from ignorant to wise, all of those are incredibly dual, and they all suggest that we are really tied to our biological temporal perspective. And what I'm trying to show people, and I do this in the face of a gale force wind of traditional religious and spiritual thought, because believe me, they've got their own thoughts on the subject, and I generally will spit in their eye about it, because the spherical perspective is an infinite one. So it says basically, if you can't believe, first thing we have to do is start to step into the shoes of the idea that we're infinite beings and that we really don't die, and that we may change form, but we don't lose everything that we were ever. That we carry the pieces that we wish to carry forward in time or out of time. So the difference between spherical and linear is that in the model that I present as spherical, everyone sits at the center of their own sphere. They become the witness of the most unique perspective by being themselves as an individual. They are not dropped into an environment like a fish into a fish tank, because that implies that the fish tank existed before you did as the fish. What I'm implying is that you are actually part of the living process of creation itself, that you're proxying for the God code, that I call it the God code. Whoever has a problem with the word God, I will address that a little later in the talk. But that's what I call it, because generally what people generally think is that they are small living in a large environment, that they are powerless in an overwhelming monstrous mountain or ocean of chaos. That's the linear perspective. That's the perspective that's little. That's the one that stays within the body and has a size and a shape and a lifespan and beliefs and limitations. The spherical perspective says that you're eternal soul and that you're occupying an incarnation for specific predetermined reasons. And as such, that experience of being within an incarnation has a whole different connotation than if you think that you're just developing or growing yourself into something more worthy. In the spherical model, you're coming from a place of non-duality. You're coming from a soulful, infinite place. In the spherical reality, you drop into an incarnational place, and it can be in different times, and it can be in several times at the same time. And the whole idea is that you're here on a mission. You're here on a mission to express basically the God code of creativity, to be the working arms, legs, eyes, ears, hearts, and bodies of creator itself. It's all mixed up in you. So you, in a sense, the spherical completely frees you, and it turns you into a perspective that is not limited by your own body and your own personality. And so you can start to actually move about. You can move about I'm sorry, I have a phone here. I didn't turn it off. You can move about in consciousness. You can move about in witnessing perspective at will, and we do. And we've been doing it, and it's always been this way. It's not like this is a new thing for us. So it's an ongoing thing. The spherical is really the only perspective that will give you the freedom to actually expand into your magical self. And that's the whole reason why I'm giving these talks. The only reason why I'm writing this book, because this awakening to spherical basically takes you out of the limiting paradigms that you're living in as a temporal being. It sets you more prominently in your soulful infinite self. And then it starts to awaken the part that you are basically holding yourself back by carrying too many lenses of perspective that were, there for a reason, that served you for a time, and you can actually let go of them.
Yeah. One thing I've noticed is that humans tend to have a strong lack of awareness. And when you have that lack of awareness, it's hard to see your reality around you, even though somebody else might see it who's standing right next to you can't see it. And that includes everything, from you having this waking life and then being someone's guide at nighttime, for example. Mm-hmm. Which I think we've all had that experience where we had dreams and we're actually helping somebody else. Or in the sense that you can see a UFO in the sky, but the person next to you doesn't see it, or a ghost, or any number of things. But not only that, or experiencing another life within this life, and then you get glimpse memories while you're doing something else.
It's a lot for everyone to keep track of. And, the compartmentalization that we all employ in the project of separation, which is sometimes called the Luciferian project, the whole idea was that you would break away from non-dual, from the oneness that is all that is, that you would break away from that and become particular. You would be different. You would be separated from that oneness. And in that separation, what does that separation mean? The separation means that you basically disidentify with the oneness. You become something at once different from it, but somehow connected to it. Well, this is all part of the design. I go into it quite deeply in the book. I think it's something we might want to touch on later about the non-dual duality. And I know that sounds like a lot of duals in one phrase. All right. The whole thing is that most of the New Age is really ensconced with the idea of oneness. And of course, it's a reaction to suffering that they all want to be rejoined with a blissful state of harmony and balance and love. Very understandable. The whole idea of the project of separation, the whole idea of duality was to create some distance between oneness and the particles. And the reason for that distance was that there could create a field between the oneness and the disparate particle. That field of potential that is between the non-dual and the dual is what we're talking about here. So that distance actually becomes a potential field. It's a creative field. And everyone is doing this. Every duality that we see is really a play of opposites. But what's more important than the opposites is that space between the opposites where all creativity happens. So when I get into the description of dual and non-dual duality, what I'm really doing is debunking the whole idea that the whole point of being in this place is to suffer and get out as quickly as possible. And I'm saying no. I know that suffering is not a party for any of us, and we all have it. And suffering goes along with it. I mean, suffering is separation from the oneness. It's a separation from the bliss. It's a separation from a harmony and the love and all the things that we wish we could live in at all times. But that separation actually is important and necessary for an aliveness to exist in the whole body of the source, the whole body of everything. Creation, in order to be alive, has to be emerging into new and original flowerings. And that is something that nobody wants to talk about because they're so determined to get out of their suffering and go to a blissful state that is static and stays blissful forever as one thing, like a heaven or a nirvana or a nirvikalpa.
We want our static status quo.
Yeah, and it's really understandable. I mean, we all forgive that impulse. We all want to be happy all the time. Of course, we all want to be in love all the time. We want to be in love with our life. We want to be in love with our people. We want to be in harmony and not in conflict. We want to be secure and not worried about whether we're worthy or not. These are all our natural human potentials and edicts that seem to come through our very genetics. So but what has happened and what I talk about extensively in the spherical model of reality and the emerging or the awakening of the magical self, what this whole treatise is about, it's really about getting people to realize they're really sitting in the seat of power, that they have all the power in the moment, in the present, but they have basically been seduced and fooled by themselves and by others to believe that their power and their ultimate is somewhere else. And so the whole division, the reason why people lean toward oneness is because they believe they're outside of something that is what they need. And the awakening, let's talk about consciousness and ascension for a second here. Now, you know how in the New Age, the word ascension is everywhere. And the whole idea of ascension is really no different than a lot of the more traditional ascent paths, whether it be, Islam or Christianity or a host of other ascent paths. All the traditional religions are built on the idea that you're living in a world that is negative, that is limiting, there's a lot of suffering, that it's not the right place to be, and that if you do the right things, you're going to graduate out of this suffering hellhole, and you're going to earn your way through the pearly gates into this state that is always blissful and always wonderful, which is a nice story.
Right.
But there's no part of this story that actually resembles reality, except for the fact that you can get to more balanced and blissful states within yourself, but it's going to be work that you do right in the here and now, and it's going to require that you understand basically magic. You're going to have to understand that you are a soul that is carrying the God code within you, that you are a mesh, you are a tapestry of both God and self. You're both flesh and God at the same time. So the whole idea of awakening the magical self is to get out of your own way and to basically awaken to this really honored position that we all carry as individuals. Our individual uniqueness as a soul, as a unique soul, different from any other soul, is more important to Creator than whether you're doing good work as a group on a cause, a humanitarian cause, or some advocacy for peace on the earth, or hunger, or whatever it is. You're being true to your basic God particle self, your individual sovereign soul self, is more important than any work you do in groups. Doing work in those groups becomes secondary to your first primary allegiance, which is going to be to soul. It's going to be to the God particle, the uniqueness that is you, that's more unique, or as unique as any other soul, distinctly unique, but also distinctly capable of doing something here that is actually a part of the God principle of creativity.
Yeah. You know, I heard somebody say just a few weeks ago that talking about the word ascension, and replacing the word ascension with the word completion. Is that we want to become complete with ourselves. And then I started thinking about the word ascension, and it almost seems like the word salvation or salvationism, when you're constantly waiting for something else to come and save you. Salvationism, we're waiting for the return of Jesus to come back and save us and, right all the wrongs that have been done. Well,
right.
How long are you going to wait for? I mean, they've been waiting for how many thousand years now, and what's happened?
Yes.
I mean, how long are we going to wait for ascension? Until we're going to, look inside and complete ourselves and come into that, internal knowing and being able to work on ourselves in that manner, and not worrying about or not thinking about, something else or somebody else or some other entity is going to come and save us.
Yeah.
It seems like, the longer we're waiting, the more we're going to wait.
It's a great point, and thank you for this. In one of the chapters that I've outlined, there's this, that I actually deal with waiting. You're right, and I've talked about this over the years, when everyone was waiting for good aliens to come and save us from ourselves, or whether it's going to be the ascension in the earth and the sun causing a pole shift, or whether there's a dimensional shift in 2012 where all of a sudden, frequency-wise, everybody is whipped up to another vibration, and now they're not encumbered by the grosser vibrations that make them do not such nice things to each other. I've heard it all, as you have. The whole idea of waiting is exactly a trap to continue to separate you from your own power and your own creativity and your own awakening. When I've heard someone use, and I think it might have been from the same source, using the word completion, because words are pretty limiting. They always, approximate at best what we're trying to describe. But so on the first hand, you got the word ascension, and the ascension was a perfect word to describe waiting to be saved, waiting for the event, waiting for their second coming, waiting for when they're worthy, waiting for their own deaths and pass through the pearly gates. All of those were waiting games, right? In the meantime, there's in that ascension game, what there is no empowerment in the moment to be a part of your own well-being. You're pretty much putting that in some other's hands, as if you're living in someone else's universe and you're just like a subject in their kingdom. Yeah. So we flip that around in Spherical, and we put you in the center. And what we do is we say, listen, you've got the best seat in the house. But if you're not seeing the view from the best seat in the house, then you got to clear some of the shit out from your eyes. All right. So the idea of substituting the word completion for ascension, going from ascension and substituting completion, is that here you have a word that describes kind of that heavenly state. And so that's why I don't use that word. The idea of completion says that there's no next step. There's no next emergent, living, inspirational, original, creative, unknown, surprise. If livingness is anything, it's unpredictable. If it is exciting, it's because it takes risks into areas that it knows nothing about. And it's all built into the code that, and I call it the God code, I'll call it the code for short. It's all built into the code that, and I'll say this, like for instance, I'm going to use the word God, forgive me if that's not a word you guys like.
That's okay. I think we all know what you mean.
All right. The idea of God as being complete is erroneous. The fact is that God would be bored to tears being complete, and so it created all of its proxies in us, in all the particles of all kinds, from the atoms to galaxies, and who knows what in other dimensional levels. It creates all those proxies with all of the attributes to be creative as well. And the whole real livingness idea is that God doesn't want to be complete because it would be boring. It would be a state. It would be a completion. A completion cannot actually feel a sense of gratitude because it hasn't risked something, it hasn't reached, it hasn't surprised itself, entered new frontiers, discovered even more about its own self. I think the idea of ignorance or the idea of chaos is a great way to describe a frontier. Most people see chaos and they think it's the devil. I see chaos and see something that's just not understood. I see it, and it's always layers and layers and layers. So completion doesn't work in as much as that God isn't complete. God isn't complete, meaning it's a lack of God to not be complete. It's not God's design to be complete. The design of life is for it to continually emerge into new, surprising places. That's the only antidote to infinity is emergence.
So, quick question from that for you, Perry. So, before God fractalized itself, was God complete at that moment?
Well, here's where words are going to fail us.
Yeah.
Time and space time always is a perspective, right?
Right.
If you were going to believe that all things are happening simultaneously, but they're also in motion, it befuddles the mind. And because of our perspective, we really have trouble with this description. So, the before and after, the idea that God had a thought and then things happen afterwards, that's all time, you see.
Yeah, and that's what I was just thinking when I asked it. I was like,
yes,
that's a linear question.
It is. And we have to ask linear questions, and I think we need time in order for us to actually do the work that we're doing in duality. So I'm not here to debunk time. I'm only here to include simultaneous time and to include outside of time along with time, like duality with non-duality. You see, these things are actually two poles of this field that I've been intimating. And the whole idea of living in all those layers, we're already doing this. So I took ascension and chose not to use completion because that didn't have an emergent quality to it and a surprise factor and a newness factor of originality. And I decided, no, it should really be more about awakening, because ascension implies you're going somewhere. Completion suggests that once you get there, everything stops and stays the same. But awakening allows you to continually to explore more layers, like in a sphere would bump out to another spherical diameter around the ones before. You could call it spherical consciousness. And the whole idea is not that one's better than the other. The idea is that it's just different and that you can find ways to express it that please you. And that is really up to the individual spark, the individual God particle that you and I and everyone that listens is. It's up to us as individuals, as individual creative God sparks, to actually dream up what this thing is going to be. And dream it up for yourself first, and you'll only do things that will benefit the whole, because that's kind of written in the middle of the code.
So, I see that for somebody that is really trying to grasp these concepts and integrate this stuff into their lives, the number one obstacle has to do with the way we are perceiving things. We've already mentioned this and talked about it a little bit. And I guess a question for you I have, Perry, is there any sort of exercise or tool or experiment or something that you could suggest to people to be able to see outside that linear reality and experience it for themselves? Because it takes experience to really be able to start to grasp these things. You have to have one of those experiences and recognize it. It takes that experience and the recognition of the experience to be able to really start to integrate this stuff into your own personal paradigms. So is there anything that you can suggest that you would urge people to try out to maybe breach that linear barrier that we experience here?
Wow, that's a huge question. And of course, without tools, we're all just kind of floating around on this sea of chaos. I find that, if people are familiar with the idea of presence, a lot of people will meditate. I prefer a more active, intentional kind of a meditation, which I call acts of presence or intention. What I would do, and the thing is, we're all we're swimming around in our lives, and we've got demands on us, and we have families, and we have problems, and we have survival needs, and we have health, and we have so many things. We have IRS, we have taxes, we have so many things that basically tell us what we have to do. I understand that it's hard to step outside of that, and one of the really strong implements and tools that I use, Tom, and is to actually you have to create some sacred space in your life somewhere. You have to step outside of your daily life. You got to step away from your family. You got to step away from your obligations. You got to step away from your cultural ego and position, and even your politics and your spiritual opinions. And you got to step into some kind of a sanctified space. And so I have an altar. I have a ceremonial place that I go, and I can close the door, and I can collect myself. I can sit in silence, and I can make intentions. I can, Tom, you and I have talked about this before in other shows, because I know that you have an altar. These altars, though most people think of altars, they think about church. These altars are really yours to make out of your own creativity. And so I really think that getting into a sacred space and sitting in it and moving things around, finding a book, candles, feathers, whatever makes you feel something reverent for a minute. Sit with that and allow yourself to really believe that you have a direct link to source, that you don't need to get someone else to tell you to do anything. All you have to do is sit quietly enough in presence and expect that you are going to be contacted by your own inner higher self. That is getting the middleman out of it. So the most important thing we want to do to start to access our more exalted state, you could say, or perspective, is to get all the middlemen out of it. Stop living in someone else's world. Stop believing in someone else's religion. Stop deciding that you don't know how to contact your own God source, and that someone else has to do the interpretations for you. Just start to believe that that's possible. So most of what I do, you guys, is I basically have to inspire myself every day. And all I want to do is mirror that same process in everyone else, where they have to remember, in a sense, that they are much more than they are being told they are, and that they've accepted themselves to be through their cultural imprinting and propaganda and all of the different kinds of modes of hypnotism and suggestion that come through our world.
As soon as I asked that question, I had something pop into my mind that is so simple to do that will make people really question the power and the abilities that each one of us have. And Ramona is quite familiar with this too, and I'm sure some of our old-time listeners will remember this. The Dr. Emoto's rice experiment.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that one right there is proof that we have a direct effect on our reality.
We started at the beginning
without
of
having to push it. Yeah, we started at the very beginning, the first year of the show. And for those of you who are not familiar with the rice experiment, we still have a page on the website that I've got some pictures there, and we wrote a little bit about it and the process that we went through. But it's so simple. You just take three containers, three of the same types of containers, and you put 3 equal amounts of rice and water in each one of the containers and cover them up. And then each day, when you're, I put them on my windowsill in the kitchen so that, I'm at the kitchen sink every day. So every day when I would notice the glasses, I would say to one of the glasses, I hate you. I hate you. You're disgusting. I want you to die. You're blah, blah, blah. And it just has to be one word will do. It's just one simple word. I hate you. And then say to the next class, I love you. And then just completely ignore the third class. And just watch.
Like the middle child.
Just watch what happens to the rice in the 3 different containers. And that in itself, and this is a very repeatable, and you get the same results every time. It's just amazing, and it will prove to anybody who does it for themselves that we have a direct effect on the physical reality around.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we also have the same impact unwittingly when we accept other people's thought forms and suggestions into our eyeballs from the internet, from misinformation, from culture, from NPR, from mainstream media, and even from the new age. I'm telling you, you are always being bombarded by people with agendas and groups with agendas, and everyone who has their whatever their humanitarian ideology is, doesn't mean that it's all together, and it usually means that they're sucking power off of their membership, and you're basically, fair game for them to kind of call you in like the herd.
Right.
So that's why the Dr. Emoto stuff, it just not only does it show that we have an impact, that we are actually generating energy through our intention and our emotions, but also it suggests that
we are affected by others also.
Yes. Wow. And so now that one of the cardinal rules of creation, and I don't know if anyone ever wrote this rule, but it seems to have come through a lot of sources, including my own, and I'm sure yours, is that you're not allowed to be interfered with directly. And it's a psychic no-no for one soul to impact another soul with its own agenda and take away the sovereignty of another. The only way that these things can happen is if the soul gives away its power to the suggester. And so what you have out in this world is you have all of these hierarchies and powerful influences who are getting people to unwittingly give up their power to them through smoke and mirrors and all kinds of great promises and ideologies and religious thoughts.
Home over.
All of it. So just remember, every soul, every one of you and me, and it goes for everybody, is that you give away your power. You are not a victim. You are basically a hapless come along until you garner more awareness and start intending your own life and stop letting someone else decide what you are and who you are and where you're going and how you're going to get there.
Yeah. Yeah. And and that's so freeing. Like that's one of the realizations that I've come into here recently, is that just because somebody I'm around is in a bad mood, or, something's going on, that doesn't mean that we have to take in their emotional content,
Yeah.
We'll be at work and, some guys will be complaining about the job, and there's really going on about it, and there's been times where, I'd listen to them and I'd start getting riled up too. And now it's like, no, I'm not taking that on, I'll listen to you, if you need somebody to vent to, you want to talk to me about it, I'll listen to you, but I'm not going to take any of that stuff on, and I've taken that from coworker, relationships to family relationships, and it's not, and I don't feel like it's being, cold-hearted, but I feel like, I'll listen to whatever you have to say, but it doesn't mean that I have to be in the same, attitude that you're in.
Absolutely. Well, the whole idea of collusion in groups and group ideologies and even family squabbles, whose side are you picking? This is really all a decision you make in the moment, and usually it's the loudest voice that gets the most attention. So you see how easy it is to, if you're looking at the same things over and over again, that's going to have your weight in your decisions about, what you see as reality or not.
But, I think that it's getting to a point now where, for me at least, is that I'm not listening to anybody else's voice. I'm listening to my voice. I don't want to hear, or not saying that I don't want to hear what somebody else has to say, but I'm not going to take on whatever somebody else is saying just because they're saying it, no matter how loud or how quiet they're saying it. I listen to me and what I feel my organic self is saying.
Well, that's where we all should be in that assessment. Unfortunately, most of us are drawn to fanfare and television and bigger than life personalities. And all of a sudden their opinion is somehow worth more than yours because maybe they have wealth or notoriety or good looks or talent. All these things are just seductions. And
America's funniest home videos.
Yes. And before we get off the subject of just how we are unwittingly agreeing to give up our power and our own identity to these different ideologies and such, we have to remember also that, just like the Yamamoto experiments, is that if we're carrying agendas in our own head and even in our thoughts, we are also impacting other people around us. So we have to get cleaned up that way. So the whole idea of presence is, and we talk about this, everyone talks about this in meditations, is that and you get drawn off on some story or some kind of tangent in your mind, some imagination or whatever it is, some passion or some feeling. And before you know it, you realize, oh my God, I'm somewhere else and it's not so good. And you try to pull yourself back to the present, right? So that you can drop back into the center of you. Well, that's kind of what this awakening process has to be like. The reason why I like sacred space of some kind or a place where you can get into reverence, it can even be in nature, or it could be on a walk in nature, is that in a sense you get to be just with yourself in the moment. And that way you're not adding to your own woe by mirroring all of this garbage that is being projected in your direction that you look at and listen to and agree with or disagree with. It all ends up being baggage in your basket. So we only have so much room in our basket of attention, and where your attention is, that's where your soul lives. So if your basket is full of, you just filled it all up with a bunch of opinions and judgments and perspectives and politics and religion and personal woes and struggles, you have no space left to really generate something new. And so this whole idea of getting into a more presence mode and having a place where you can be, in a sense, insulated from all of that input, it gives you a chance also to start jettisoning out some of these lies about who you think you are. But you realize, wait a minute, I didn't actually come up with this. This is something that was given to me and I just took it on. Get rid of some of that stuff, leave some room in your basket, and now start planting some real intentions in that space that you've created within yourself. And that's why I think very important. That's why the second half of my treatise here is really about awakening the magical self. Because really you sit in the control seat if you have enough wherewithal and attention left over to actually use that position. And we all have to earn our way. You could say if there's any earning that has to be done, it's basically just us trying to winnow out all the lies about the self and get closer to the essential soul that you are, the infinite soul, the one that came with a particular objective, but who is also here on an exploration and an adventure. And so that's the part of us that I'm trying to mirror and trying to be. It's the one that can make a difference in your life. You're not going to be waiting anymore for someone else to save you. You're going to start slowly improving your perspective until your suffering level will come down to the point where you won't be knee-jerk reacting to this place as if it's hell and you got to get out of it. I mean, when you decide to become incarnated into time and space, whatever dimension, you are basically putting on a heavy suit and going in a very foreign environment. And you come in knowing that it's going to be hard. You're going to forget who you are. You're going to forget that you have all kinds of infinite support around you and that you come from oneness. You're going to forget all that because that's part of the adventure. There's no risk. If there's no risk, there's no emergence, you see. You have to think that you're at risk. Something has to be at risk for you to actually create some kind of a remedy or some mitigating, creative, imaginative, remedy. That's the game. So if we awaken more to, I always tell people, listen, there are no victims. There's legitimate victims, and we point to them all day long. We are legitimate victims in the eyes of the culture and our friends and family when we're taking it in the shorts by life. And some people are bigger victims legitimately than others in this life. I'm not saying that there isn't legitimate victimhood. What I am saying is that if you lose the idea of yourself as a victim, then you will step away from that position in your life. You will actually create the next stage of you that isn't the victim. But if you keep hanging on to your victim like a badge of honor, some kind of a credential that you can use to take power and instill guilt and shame in others, then you're no better than those that victimized you. You just perpetuate it and you suck power out of it. You suck energy and attention out of it. Right. So I'm suggesting in the magical approach, the magical awakening self, is that you stop thinking right now. Stop thinking yourself as a victim, because as soon as you're a victim, you're going to be looking for a fight. So stop the fight, stop the victim, and start creating what you want. And you can't do it if you don't think you have the power to do it. So start believing that you make a difference, that what you think and how you intend things and whatever prayers or intentions that you put forth with a clean and clear heart. And even though you have doubts, I mean, we all have doubts about whether it makes a difference or not. Just blow through the doubts and just do it anyway. Fake it till you make it. Add good, positive, creative, imaginative reflections of what your life can be, and stop indulging the victim. Because, I think everyone understands the idea of a feedback loop, right?
Yep. Yes.
So if you're planting negative reflections of the world out in the world and you're only colluding with people that agree with your victimhood, what you're doing is you're just basically feeding that same thought form of negativity. And so the world will respond by keep presenting you with the same negativity because you're actually fueling it. You're fueling the thought forms. You're getting other people to agree with you. You all do it together, and even masses of people will replicate that same negative outcome. So how do you break that cycle? It's simple as this. You stop colluding, you stop putting out that victim vibe, and stop believing that that's the only way that it can be and that you're powerless to do anything about it. And you do one little thing at a time, one little intention. You stop your mind in the middle of a tirade. You just stop and go, wait a minute. I got to come back to presence. I got to believe, and I've got to plant a good seed here instead of just reiterating the same old victim seeds and thereby, adding to my woe. That's what kind of collecting of the consciousness of awakening means. That's what I think was the intention of even meditations, more active meditations, was that to keep from being hijacked by your habits, your bad habits and thought and in fear, and instead really drop into the fact that you're actually a spark of divinity yourself. And boy, it's a hard road to get to believe that, but I believe it starts with the present. It starts with right now. It starts with saying to yourself right now, I can believe this.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, no. Every morning on the way to work, and we get up around 4 o'clock in the morning. We got to work at 5, and every morning on the way to work, it's a conscious thing I do is as I set my intentions for here and now, and what's going to happen, and I hold that state of gratitude for waking up again. For yes, it's early in the morning. I don't really feel like driving to work, but I'm still going. And you know what? I'm grateful that I'm going someplace.
Yeah.
And that's why just like you said, I really think it's important that we monitor our thoughts, and we don't go down those thought roads, and we set our intentions for what we want now, not what we want tomorrow or next week, but for what we want in the present moment.
Yep.
Goodness. Yeah. So true.
Yep. Well, we have burned up this first hour, Perry. Some damn good stuff came through there.
Yeah.
I think, I feel a lot better about the way things, rolled out in this show and, the way people are going to be able to really, soak up and understand exactly what we're trying to get out here. So, really good stuff. How can people get a hold of you, Perry?
I'm going to ask them. I still haven't got my website up for this latest version of me. What I would suggest is they just email me at perrymills@att.net. I have a series of articles I'd be glad to shoot out to anyone who's interested that are basically precursors and parts of this book that's coming out. And any questions they might have, I'm glad to answer them. So yeah, perrymills@att.net, and just, run it by me.
All right. Well, in the next hour, I'd like to get into one of your parts of your outline is the myth and the gift of death. So we didn't get a chance to ask that question, but I would definitely like to hear more about that.
Well,
what you got going on there.
Yeah, no holds barred, huh?
All right.
All right. Well, if you're out there listening on one of those other media formats and want to check out Hour 2, I would urge you to go over to www.the100thmonkeyradio.com, where you will find 6 years worth of shows there. So good stuff, guys. And man, we love you all, and we will see you in Hour 2. Condemnation without investigation is the height of ignorance.
Change the way you look at things, and things you look at change.
How do you love your sweet potato?
The love you deny.
Yeah, Ramon, we miss you, bud. All right, guys, we'll see you in the next.